G'day everyone, how's all going? Fantastic to see some really good rain. Here today I've got Lyndell Stone, a district vet with the local land services, Sam Nicholson, a local dairy farmer here at Taree, Peter Bill from the local land services district agronomist, and myself is Josh Hack, PGG Rights and Seeds. The idea here today is we just want to have a good chat about just some of the risks that we've got coming ahead of us. We've had some fantastic rain, so we've just got some issues and some risks around things like Kikuyu poisoning, which Lyndell's going to cover. We're going to have some issues around pulp and kidney, okay, so change of feed diets, things like that. We've also got some issues with the quick growth of the Kikuyu and things like that coming out, and the change in weather. So we're going to have some nitrate and potassium and grass tetany type issues. And we're also going to have some issues around working out how do we deal with surplus feed and quick growth of feed. So stay with us. We're just going to have a good chat through and talk about all those different issues and see if we can pick up some tips and prevention options to be able to stop us from getting in trouble. Okay, thanks very much. G'day everyone, how's going? My name's Josh Hack from PGG Rights and Seeds. I'm with Sam Nicholson here at Nicholson's Dairy. Just wanted to get Sam's view on what he's doing at the moment. We've had some really good rainfall, 100 mils sort of thing around the area. We've got a really good flush of new Kikuyu growth, which we know can be fantastic, and we want to build up and try and make some silage and get some quality feed and cheaper feed into the animals, but we know that's got some challenges and stuff. So just want to get some advice and see what Sam's doing here on his farm to manage that flush of feed coming into the system.
Yep, no worries, Josh. Yeah, as you said, the rain's absolutely been brilliant here for us. This time last week we were scratching our heads wondering what the hell we're going to do. Hay supply was getting tight, and there was just getting less and less grass about, so as you can see it's just greening things up. And but basically for us it's business as usual. We're still going around on our rotation, still keeping it around that 20 days as we were back a week or two ago, and we're still feeding hay, so we'll continue to do that over the next few weeks until we sort of build up, let that kite get away and build up a bit of a feed wedge ahead of us. And once we start to see that, we can really start, hammering into it and hopefully, realise that we've got a feed wedge and we can take a few paddocks out and cut them to silage and really just push this kike along with this conditions, this humid weather. It's really gonna take off. So it's our cheapest form of feed. So if we can really utilise that and push that growth, and hopefully we won't have to feed any more hay in the next month or two. So that's sort of where we're at.
Yeah, fantastic, Sam. So the key to that is that we've got this new flush of feed. Okay, it could be high in nitrates and potassium, so that could be causing some issues for our animals. Okay, so we can have grass tetany, nitrate poisoning, all those sorts of things. So if we can delay the grazing and allow the pasture to get to a period where it's that 4.5 to 5 leaf, okay, so that's diluted some of that nitrate and potassium through the plants. The other things you can do is put some lick blocks out that have phosphorus and calcium and things like that to help you, but that's some other options. But delaying that grazing and reducing the amount of feed that really highly nitrate potassium going into the animals, so continuing your drought feeding strategy going into it now, making sure you're continuing that hay, make sure you got that feed not changing. So we need to transition out of that, okay, over the next 3 weeks. So we transition out of that feeding slowly, and we're going to have the local land services, Peter Bill, and also we're going to have a district vet talking about the importance of pulp and kidney and all those sorts of things. So thanks very much, Sam. Fantastic, doing a great job here. Hopefully we can get some more follow-up rain, kick into autumn, and the drought's behind us.
Yep, let's hope so.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep, thanks.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the some of the risks that of pasture regrowth from a very young stage. We're standing in a pasture that's actually had rain about 2 weeks ago, and we've got Kikuyu that's put on 2 or 3 leaves. And right at this stage, it's early in its development, and what we find from past testing is that the nitrate levels can be high, the potassium levels can be high, and that's a very paddock orientated process. On a lot of dairies you'll find extremely high potassium levels, and that can influence this young growth to be a lot higher and really not ideal for early milking feed. So delaying this until the plant matures and we actually get 4 and 4.5 leaf can make a big difference to lower those potassium levels and bring them down. The important thing is that some paddocks will be very high, other paddocks not so high. So something that's been cut for silage frequently will probably be low, but an effluent paddock, an old night paddock, they can be really quite high. One of the important things is have a think about which paddocks are going to be high in fertility, which are low.
Hi Sam, thanks so much for making your property available today. I think it'd be great to share with the viewers the great practice that you're doing here in terms of when we do have a flush of green growth, recognising that that has some very real animal health risks, and the best way to mitigate those animal health risks are by doing what you're doing, by continuing to feed, supplementary feed, until the pasture is over that danger period. And so those animal health risks are mainly Kikuyu toxicity, nitrate toxicity and grass tetany, but also vaccination, ensuring your herd is up to date with your 5-in-1 or 7-in-1 vaccinations, and that's something that I think that you manage.
Yep. So yeah, like you said, you know, just coming out of quite a long dry period, and all of a sudden we get all this rain. So as you can see, you know, it's brought on all this instant flush of green growth, and you know, like you said, with that comes a lot of animal health issues. So what we're doing is sort of continuing our drought feeding strategies that we've been doing pretty much. So we strip graze the cows still on a set rotation, about 20 days. So we're giving them a small amount of pasture each day, and we supplement that with cereal hay. So they get about 6 to 7 kilos per cow per day of cereal hay that you can see that we put out in front of on the fresh strip of grass each day. So that really helps them transition into this fresh new growth, and just keep a balanced diet really. So when they do come onto it, you know, their rumen, their stomachs can adjust to it. And also we do an annual boost of 7-in-1 for the whole herd, just blanket vaccinate the whole herd to further reduce the risks of those diseases.
So Pulp Kidney is a real risk at the change of seasons, and when we have a flush of growth. The Pulp Kidney bacteria, the Clostridial bacteria, are in the gut of the animal all the time, and it's that change of feed which is the risk factor. And the simplest and easiest way to prevent deaths from Pulp Kidney is ensuring that all stock are up to date on their 5-in-1 or 7-in-1 vaccination, and ideally ensuring they've had their booster shots within the last 3 months is the best way to prevent deaths from Pulp Kidney. So Kikuyu toxicity is an ever-present issue on the coast. The ramifications are quite severe in terms of sudden death in cattle. Kikuyu toxicity is an issue on the coast that we all need to manage. The toxin is still to be determined, but we do know that there have been a number of cattle deaths over previous years, and the risk period is what we're facing now. So after a period of drought, and when the Kikuyu has been under intense stress and drought-breaking rains, there's certainly the risk of Kikuyu toxicity. So what you're doing here in terms of delaying the feeding of the Kikuyu until it is over that 4.5 stage growth is key. The clinical signs of Kikuyu toxicity, often it may be sudden death, but if you do actually monitor your herd frequently, the cattle have an intense dehydration, and sometimes they display what's known as sham drinking, because the toxin in the Kikuyu damages the actual stomach walls and prevents the fluid from making its way into the blood. So the animal, whilst it has a very big fluidy rumen, is intensely dehydrated, and they have sunken eyes, and they may show evidences of sham drinking, where they stand over a water source trying to drink, but they, even though they're intensely dehydrated, they can't physically fit any more fluid in their rumen, and they may show signs of stomach pain as well before death. So in terms of managing Kikuyu toxicity, it's, as Sam is successfully doing here, is actually preventing it by ensuring that the pasture is not grazed in that risk period, but also just being alert to the signs of Kikuyu toxicity. Hello Sam, thanks again for sharing your strategies on farm this morning about managing Kikuyu pastures, and all pastures really, after drought-breaking rains and the risks that can present to animal health. Whilst we're on a dairy farm this morning, these risks apply equally to beef producers, and some of the key risks are obviously Kikuyu toxicity, nitrate toxicity and grass tetany. So in terms of nitrate toxicity, what you're doing here is ideal practice in terms of slowing the introduction to cattle of a new feed. After all, rumen bugs are adapted to the feed that they're on at that point in time, so the microflora, the various bacteria and fungi that are in the rumen. After all, the rumen is a large fermentation vat, and so the risk is with the introduction of rapidly fermentable lush grasses after drought, with drought-breaking rains, is that change in feed can create a number of risks for stock, and nitrate toxicity is one of those key risks. So if the cattle have been on a lower quality feed, a very fibrous feed, lower levels of protein and nitrogen, when they're presented with a high nitrate feed, those rumen bugs aren't adapted to handling that feed, and you can have stock deaths due to nitrate toxicity. And nitrate toxicity is a very sudden death. The high nitrate level in the feed overwhelms the capacity of the rumen bugs to turn the nitrate into ammonia, and it ties up the oxygen, and they actually die virtually from asphyxiation. So what you're doing here is an ideal management strategy.
It's basically what, trying to limit their intake of that new introduced high toxic feed, and they get grain in the dairy, they get hay, so it's about buffering, providing a buffer for that the rumen to compensate for the introduced feed, and gradually introduce it to them over time.
And that's the key strategy, is gradual introduction of the new feed over a period of 2 to 3 weeks to give those rumen bugs time to adapt, and that's the best bet to try and reduce animal health risks from rapidly fermentable new growth. Really risky paddocks for nitrate toxicity are those areas where there might have been high fertiliser application, high urea applications, grazing cattle camps where there's high nitrogen, and so it's really important obviously to reduce the grazing of those pastures until those nitrate levels, until the plant has time to photosynthesize and use up the stored nitrogen in the actual plant itself, so that when the cattle eat the new growth, they're getting a slower introduction of the high nitrate levels. So grass tetany, or low magnesium, is an ever-present issue with both dairy cattle, but sometimes beef cattle as well. The clinical signs of grass tetany, the cattle store magnesium in their bones and muscle, but they also excrete it on a daily basis in urine, faeces and milk. And young, rapidly fermentable, rapidly growing pasture can be really low in magnesium, so if they're not taking in enough magnesium on a daily basis, their body becomes quite quickly depleted of magnesium, and this causes a level of excitement in the cattle. They may be hyperexcitable, they may muscle twitch. Sometimes the first sign is actually just sudden death, and there may be evidence that the cattle have been on their side paddling in a hyperexcitable state before death. It is important, if you do have cattle who appear to be suffering from low magnesium or grass tetany, they can be very aggressive, so you need to treat them with care. And so one of the key strategies with managing grass tetany risk is that delaying of feeding off the pasture until the pasture, the potassium levels and the magnesium levels go back to a safe feeding level. You can obviously add some licks to the diet to supplement magnesium, but delaying the pasture and continuing to feed as Sam is doing here with the actual supplementary feeding that they've been feeding all over the drought. So continue feeding for that 2 to 3 weeks, ensure that some paddocks are locked up so that the pasture can mature, and then you can actually introduce the new feed to the cattle.
So one of the important things is have a think about which paddocks are going to be high in fertility, which are low, and some paddocks that are particularly low in fertility will actually need nitrogen and respond to nitrogen. Sam, you've actually put out some nitrogen over the weekend?
Over the weekend, yeah, I put on about 3 tonne, just sort of following the cows, just because I want to get that kike to that 4.5, 5 leaf stage as quick as I can. So it's at that ideal stage for the cows to come in, graze it, and you know, see a response in the milk vat with milk production, and then try and get a feed wedge ahead of us, so then we can start taking paddocks out for silage, and then the paddocks that we're putting, I'll put some more urea on the end of this week, so those paddocks might be, you know, I might decide, you know, in a few weeks time we might actually skip grazing that and cut it for silage instead.
Yeah, no, it's good, proactive. We're in a situation where we've got a great opportunity. Sam, you've had 140 mils. If we convert that with Kikuyu, we can grow 33 kilograms of dry matter per millimetre of rainfall. So 100 mils can quite easily grow 3 tonne with no more rain. And it's important to understand we've got that potential right now, and in a paddock like this that's not stressed and ready to go, silage is going to be a great option. And bear in mind that the feed costs that are out there, they may come down a bit, but supply will go down, and come winter we might be looking for some silage, and homegrown feed is going to be a great opportunity. Overall stocking rates are down and you're going to have a surplus of feed. And what we, you know, you could say, look, I'll back off and I don't need to fertilise, but a more proactive approach is you've got the rain, make use of it, and be proactive. That we can double the amount of feed coming off these pastures by putting that urea on, make good silage that we can feed back in a couple of months, and it's a much more proactive way that, right, we've got this rain, let's make the most of it.
And urea, you know, it's no different. Putting a tonne of urea on is no different to feeding a tonne of grain or a tonne of hay. And it probably works out to be cheaper with the extra growth that you're going to get from that tonne of urea. So, you know, it's your cheapest form of feed at the moment.
So Sam, you would have applied 50 kilos of nitrogen, which roughly $1.20. It's going to cost you, say, $60 a hectare. We know from past research that when we apply nitrogen to good pastures like this, we can get 20 kilograms of dry matter per kilogram of nitrogen applied. So that's roughly, if we're putting out 50 kilograms of N, you're going to get an extra tonne of dry matter, 1,000 kilograms, for roughly $60, $70 a tonne. And that is eating costs on that, but that's pretty good cheap feed at this point in time, and certainly easy, good feed to put away in time.
What Pete just said is completely makes sense in our situation. When we're, you know, the past few months we've been paying upwards of between $400 and $500 a tonne for hay, and, you know, $500 to $600 a tonne for grain. So, you know, when you think of you know, $60 a tonne and probably a few more costs on top of that for grazing and stuff, around $100 a tonne to grow some cheap feed, some good quality feed I should say, you know, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. All right. The other thing is we've done a number of trials at James Neal's over the years, and applying this nitrogen at this time of year and before grazing really doesn't put you in such a bad position in terms of the Kikuyu outcompeting ryegrass. We find that the nitrogen that's applied in this grazing is mostly used up, and it's quite a minimal effect on in the next grazing. So it's really not a risk, it's an opportunity that we should grab hold of right now. All right. So a rain opportunity like this is an opportunity for everybody. A lot of people have cut back stock, and pastures are going to respond and grow away And you know, the sad thing about that is that if it's not utilised, it'll grow rank, tall, and it'll be actually wasted. But a really good opportunity for beef farmers with good quality Kikuyu or even a bit of Paspalum Zetaria, if it's cut at the right time, is that we can cut it for silage. It can be a really valuable product in the next 5 or 6 months to feed back over winter. Now's the time to be thinking about it, rather than just letting this, what's potentially really good quality feed, go through and to seed and be wasted. So Sam, you're a silage contractor. It's going to be a rush. There'll be a lot of people calling out. What are some of the things that farmers need to do to get ready? You've put fertiliser on. You need to be thinking ahead, timing.
Yep.
How can we make this thing happen well?
Yep. So I guess obviously, you know, like you said, with the reduced stock numbers across the area and some widespread rainfall, that's going to encourage a lot of this this Kikuyu to sort of take off. And so I guess it's about assessing your situation, and if you don't have stock to graze the feed, then you've got to, I guess, make a decision whether to, you know, how much extra feed can I grow by putting some fertiliser on and then locking it up to make some silage, and then you've got to, so that you don't leave it too late and let that grass get away on you. You've got to be able to, you know, ring us up well in advance so we can, because we're obviously going to be busy on our own, making our own as well. So make sure you have a plan in place a couple of weeks early to make that call to your contractor so that he can get in and cut that grass at the right stage of growth and make some, so you can have some good quality feed to take through the winter for your stock.
Thanks, Sam.
Righto, thanks very much everybody. Thanks Lyndall, thanks Peter, thanks Sam. That was really good overview of what's going on and some of the issues we've got coming up. So remember just to keep an eye on some of those issues we're going to have. If you need to, contact a nutritionist or some trusted advisors that you've got, Local Land Services, DPI. Make sure you've got some contacts there. If you've got any questions, don't be afraid, follow up. It's better to be preventive rather than dealing with some stock losses and things like that. So guys, thanks very much. Enjoy the rain, let's keep it coming, and thanks very much. See you later.